Preparing. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Jewish Wisdom for Coping with the Pandemic. Although things are improving, we are in some ways out of the woods, but there's still lots of re-entering to do, lots of parts of the country and world where the pandemic continues. And as part of Musar mindfulness practice, we'll keep going with this name for a while. Musar is a practice for helping us become in touch with our best selves, to connect our aspirations for how we act in everyday life. And for those of us who've been here for a while, we know that we focus on a particular soul trait or character trait for 2 weeks at a time. And today we're going to start the first of 2 weeks on silence or mindful speech. So before we get into that, we will begin, as we always do, with a short meditation, a short guided meditation. So please relax in your chair and close your eyes. And take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And with each inhale, imagine yourself floating in the ocean. And in the inhale, a wave comes along and you float up. And then the exhale, imagine the wave passing and you float back down again. Up on the inhale, down on the exhale. If thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them pass. The way each wave is passing while you float in the ocean. And on your next inhale, think to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema. Listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema. Listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, as I said before, today, I forgot to update my slide here. We are on to silence and mindful speech. Next week, I will be on vacation. I will be going back to Syracuse to visit my family once again, this time with my wife and daughter. So we won't be meeting on the 24th, but then we will be meeting again on July 5th to go through the second part of silence and mindful speech. And today we're going to focus more on the mindful speech, positive speech end of things. And in 2 weeks, we will talk about Lashon Hara, or harmful speech. So last week we were studying kavod, or honor, or respect for other peoples. And one of the suggested practices was to maybe notice when others were doing good. You know, we tend to sometimes bias towards noticing when people are making mistakes. So if you'd like to check in and see, was there a time where maybe you noticed someone else doing good? Or in the spirit of my email this week, if there's anything you would like us to celebrate with you, I would love to hear that as well. So would anyone care to share? Yeah, Carrie.
I'll share what I wrote to you about. Yesterday was the first day that I was in my new studio.
Carrie, you sound a little bit quiet to me. I don't know if you can get a little closer to the mic.
Distance from me.
Okay, that's a little better.
My laptop speaker doesn't work.
Okay.
Yesterday, I haven't had an art studio in many, many years. And yesterday was the first day that I was able to work in my new studio. It's not finished, but I was able to work with two former students who came down to visit me from New Hampshire and Vermont, and it was exhilarating. It was just an amazing feeling, and I got to teach again a little bit, which was also an encouraging feeling because I didn't know if I would ever be able to do that again. So I am riding on a high of that, finding that I still have the teacher in me and that I can start working again on my artwork.
Wonderful.
I'm happy.
Well, we'll all give you a symbolic celebratory hug, to share this wonderful moment with you. So thank you so much for sharing that. Anyone else have something they'd like to share? Yeah, Stephanie. So you should unmute yourself.
It's funny because I'm a teacher and I'm surprised I didn't catch that. But anyway, I'm happy to be here. This is my first time, and I was invited by my friend Nancy, and so I'm looking forward to this. But it's an interesting topic because I don't always celebrate things that I do, that I accomplish, and today was a big day for me. I got all my grades posted for my students, and I typically have an extremely tough time doing this. There's always students that are sort of in the middle of grades, and I sometimes just agonize over whether to give them this grade or that grade, and it doesn't get any better from semester to semester. And so when I can get through it, and when I can just say, I'm just gonna go with my heart and what I feel is the right thing to do. And so I was dragging my feet getting through it. I didn't get it done yesterday or the day before, but today I got it done. So I'm just super thrilled about that.
All right, excellent. All right, another congratulatory virtual hug.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing that, and congratulations and welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, would anyone else care to share something? Carol.
Well,
Carol.
I took a step up at the farm. And this is going to sound kind of, I don't know, but I went to ride a horse that I'm somewhat familiar with, the one that I often have the picture of, the little dark guy, and I was real happy about that. But he was lame. So I had to go back up to the office or to the yard and stand in a different horse. Well, that's a total spin of the dice, so to speak. I could have got anything. I heard somebody say, "Is Cowboy okay?" I said, "Yeah, Cowboy's good." Okay, because at least I've ridden him. And there are tons of new horses. So I got on this horse, and he was a lot more horse than I remembered. He kind of exploded into the lope, and it really did not want to slow down, and I managed. And that to me was celebratory because, as you know, I've been off the horses for over a year, and the body doesn't want to do what it's supposed to do. It wasn't great. Some of it wasn't pretty. But I've been feeling real apprehensive about stepping up on the more difficult, more more advanced horses, I should say. And I said, well, I rode Cowboy and he's fairly advanced. They all say that Little Forest is advanced, but he and I just seem to have an understanding. So we're good. So anyway, I'm real happy about that. Feeling very celebratory about that.
All right, congratulations. Another virtual hug for you, Carol. So thank you. You know, it's so easy to kind of blow past these things and just get on to the next thing. And it's so important to, you know, there's a saying I learned in parenting, which is, you know, you need to catch your kids doing something good, because it's so easy to constantly be like, clean the room, do this. Why'd you spill the juice? You know, but if you catch them doing something good, you can get that positive reinforcement. And that's hard. And I think it's even harder to catch ourselves doing something good. Or even when we're not doing something good, just noticing that something good has happened and taking a while to kind of stop and marinate in that without like getting an inflated ego. But it's a big enough deal that it merits a little bit of celebration and recognition for sure. Paul, you had your hand up before.
So I'm at my mom's right now down in Southern California, and our office that's in Cambridge, Massachusetts, had a grand opening yesterday. So I was not able to attend, and it's something that Massachusetts is opened up at this point, and so it was a chance for a lot of people to get together, see each other for the first time in. You know, sometimes first time ever, because we had new people come on board that have not been in the office yet. So I was feeling a little bit sad that I wasn't there. You know, I'm glad that I'm here, but I was sad that I wasn't able to be part of that. But then I was talking with a colleague of mine who's, I work with her quite often. And she had been to that, and she told me some about it. And she said, "Oh, and I want to let you know that I walked up to a couple of people that, you know, I know them." And she said, and they were talking about you, and they were just talking to each other about how you just really rock. And it was so wonderful that she let me know that in the first place. And you know, I was taught at a young age by my mother to be very modest about things and to say basically, oh, you know, that, I'm sure they say that at everybody, something like that. Tell me that, because it did mean a lot. It meant a lot that because oftentimes I don't know when I'm doing my work whether I'm doing a good job or not. I just know that they keep asking me to go to meetings, so I must be doing something right. But in terms of, you know, getting sort of praise, there are just a couple of people that I have there who are, you know, who give me some feedback, but generally speaking, not. So it was just, I just felt like it was nice to kind of hold that and to think, again, not in an inflated way, just to think, well, I'm glad. I mean, it feels like it's a mutual feeling that, you know, they also, I really enjoy working with them, you know, and it just.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So, thank you.
Well, congratulations, Paul. You get the virtual hug too. And thank you for sharing your thing to celebrate with us. Anybody else care to share? Yeah, Joanne. So remember to unmute.
Okay. So I did share part of this with you about how I had to speak off the cuff on Sunday, and it went fine, and people said, "Oh, that was perfect, you know, just enough and on point." And and the person who I consider my nemesis called me up to say, because she's hard of hearing, "What? I couldn't hear what you said. What did you say?" So I was at the synagogue office, and I actually had the paper next to me. Maybe I was here. Anyway, I had the paper next to me, so I read her what I said, which was trying to cover all bases, basically, because I did have written down, you know, like the synagogue's giving, I mean, Sisterhood's giving the synagogue $6,000 to support whatever program, wherever they think it can best be used. However, several of the board members of the sisterhood would like to see that be applied to the youth program. So, so when I read that to her, because she and this other woman were calling me about, well, we want them to earmark it, but they may or they may not. But so I covered my bases. She said, okay, you covered your bases. So I felt good about that. Because that's what I intended to do. It's like, do what you want, but we would like you to do this. So nobody could complain that I didn't say that. I did say it, but they'll do what they want.
Well, thank you for sharing. Is that it, Joanne?
Yeah, no, I have another little thing. We're doing a honey drive now for Rosh Hashanah. We send jars of honey to people, and I decided that I would send it to people who, like, even though it was like,
I would just say briefly so we have time for everyone to share.
I'm sorry. People who helped me when I had cancer,
when
I was going through treatment, and people who I feel have been friendly towards me now. That's
wonderful. Wonderful. Well, that's a great thing to do. You get the virtual hug. Thank you for sharing your memory of people who helped you and navigating a little bit of a tricky political situation and a last-minute speech. And absolutely, is worthy of some celebration for sure.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're on a bit of a roll here. If anyone else would like to share, we can do that. Otherwise, we can move on. Yes, Karina.
So I'll just be brief, but our synagogue, I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and our synagogue hired a new superintendent for our United Jewish School here. And I was hired on as the admin for him. And so when I went in, the rabbi said, here's your jobs that you're supposed to do on paper. Do you want to do it? And I signed, and they said, okay, now I'm going to tell you what you're really going to do. And that was to go through 16 classrooms, and that were a huge mess because pandemic was happened. And he says, I don't want the new superintendent to see all this, and I want it gone. And I thought, okay, I can do that over the course of the summer. He's like, no, we're renting out the temple to the special needs camp that starts in 2 weeks. So it all has to be done in 2 weeks.
Oh boy.
But I did it. I cleaned them all out, and I put everything in my office to sort through. So that's what I'm doing now. But every time somebody came by, they would say, oh, Karina, I saw the classrooms. Did you do those? They look so much better. And it was just nice. Everybody that said, oh, that looks good. It was nice that they saw and appreciated it. That's it.
Well, that is definitely an accomplishment worth celebrating. You get virtual hug, and well done. And I love the kind of positive attitude about the whole thing too. And that is great. Anyone else? Okay, well, let's see. I think that was important, and I'm glad we spent our time on that. All right, I have some wisdom from Shefa Gold here, which I thought would be a good place for us to begin. We're again leading up to sort of mindfulness and mindful speech. So she was writing in her book Torah Journeys about the Torah portion of Korach. And Korach, we passed this, I think it was fairly recently, within the last month, I think. And he complains to Moses that he doesn't like Moses being in charge, and why, aren't we all, divine people? And, it doesn't turn out so well for him. But she's talking about, well, maybe this is an okay thing to kind of talk about to sort of air things rather than sitting on them and stewing on them. Maybe it's okay to let it out. So that's kind of what she's talking about in the first part. And I may have a volunteer to unmute yourself and to read this second paragraph, please, or second bullet.
Sure.
Oh,
As a young rebel, my truth sometimes lacked kindness. My passion for justice sometimes shattered peace. Yet what a blessing it was for the power of Korah to rise in me and teach me, I think it's me, that my pointed challenges and questions were holy. Over a lifetime of mistakes and repentance, wisdom gradually emerges to call together kindness and truth and to kindle the love between justice and peace.
Thank you.
Nice.
Wendy. Okay, so what is Rabbi Gold talking about here? And again, I can't see many of you, so it's okay to just unmute yourself and share your perspective.
Well, I'm thinking about the fact that tomorrow we're having a national holiday. And I'm thinking that was something that wisdom told us to do. Whether or not they're doing it, correctly or not, I don't know. But it seems like wisdom that would gradually emerge to call together kindness and truth, and to kindle the love between justice and peace. It seems like that is at least a step forward for us.
Thank you, Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
I was struck by that first sentence. As a young rebel, my truth sometimes lacked kindness. How often have you heard people say, well, I'm just telling you how I see it, and the way you feel about it is up to you. And often what the person is saying is, a lot of times it's kind of mean. It could be either said differently or not said at all. And I mean, I had someone close to me in my family, a couple people in my family who were very into this. This is just my truth. And, if you don't like it, that's, you're responsible for that. I didn't see it quite that way.
Yeah, and where does she come down on this issue, do you think? Where do you think, because she's talking about a Jewish perspective on whether that's okay? What do people think from a Jewish perspective? Is it okay to just blurt our truth out there and, listener beware?
Well, it's good to speak the truth. And sometimes you do have to shatter everything. But you have to look at, what is your motive for doing this? What's your real motive for telling this truth? If it is in the pursuit of justice, honestly in the pursuit of justice, then I think there's some justification. But if it's just to get something that is annoying you off your chest to make you feel better, regardless of how anybody else feels, you might want to think twice about that. I'm not saying you should never say it, but you might think about how you say it, when you say it, and
Yeah, so to spend some time kind of mindfully approaching it. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Frank.
A couple of times, I think I've been doing this now recently, is I started a men's group, 45 years ago that we still meet. And I got annoyed and I kind of crossed some boundaries. And I made sure that the next week that we got together, we talked about it. And what this reminds me of is that if something really bothers us, I think it's better to say it out and then come around and deal with it, because what you'll find is that other people have similar feelings. It wasn't elegant, but yet we had a chance to talk about it. So I think that when we're disappointed, or at least our awareness leads us someplace where we may regret, I think bringing it up with the people that who we have encountered in this, I think it's a good thing, because I think that brings people closer, actually.
Yeah, Linda.
I'm not fond of the role of devil's advocate, and I try to not engage in it too often, but I think what we're talking about a person really has to know themselves and their capabilities.
Mm.
And I've had a few experiences in which I did give voice to something that was displeasing me. And afterwards, I wished that I hadn't.
Mm.
So the sentence that I try to use as my guide is, before you say something, ask yourself, is it true? Is it kind? And is it necessary?
Mm.
And that will often level it for me.
Mm. Thank you, Linda, and thank you, Paul. And I think there were, you both brought up some very good points. And the one thing from Paul's story that really struck me is that, when we say something, and maybe, on the one hand, maybe it doesn't go down well, but I think that's part of Chef Gold's initial position is, it might be better to just air it. But then if there are some hurt feelings, there's an opportunity for repair afterwards. Even if it doesn't go perfectly, for Frank's story, it's like, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's get some repair, which is very different than the sentiment that some people have that Carol brought up earlier, which I've certainly encountered people like this. And I used to be a person like that, where it's like, hey, I'm just telling you the way it is. And if you can't handle that, that's too bad for you. That's a very different valence. And Linda brought up the word kindness, which, was also in the second part of Rabbi Gold's teaching, which is really, that should be part of our deliberative process. And maybe there's a kinder way to make our point than the initial, thing that pops into our head.
That's kind of what I was saying. Oh, sorry.
I was just, let me get to Carrie and then we'll come back to
sure.
Stephanie, and then we'll come back to you.
Thank you. My mother is an example of what happens if you don't express your feelings. She died from Alzheimer's, and in her last few years, and she was a very, she kept a lot of things inside her, and she didn't always say what she felt about other people or even in her own marriage or with her kids and so forth. And when the Alzheimer's got bad, all the anger and frustration that she had suppressed came out in various forms. For example, she wanted to kill my father, a man she'd been married to for 62 years and loved dearly. And when she was in her more lucid moments, she was that loving wife again. So I've learned that it's not healthy to keep everything inside. I'm not saying that one should blurt out everything, but we need to be mindful of the damage that can happen to us if we don't express what we feel or what we need to people.
Thank you, Carrie. Well said. Stephanie, did I see your hand?
Well, I just wanted to comment on something that happened to me as a very young child. Words can be very powerful and very, very hurtful. And I was in a grade school situation. The teacher had us all go in a circle, sitting in a circle. And then she just asked like a student to start and talk about someone, and that we would each, go around the circle and say something. And this student looked at me and just said, I think Stephanie is a snob and very unfriendly. And as a child, I was like shocked and I didn't know what to say. But what that student didn't know, I mean, she might have spoken her truth and how she felt about me, but what she had no idea about is that I had just lost my father. He had passed away. I was always a very quiet child anyway, but that was something that was really hard for me to experience during those years because all the other kids had parents and I didn't know how to express to any of them that I was going through this. And I was having a hard time with it myself. And it was with me for many, many years. And even sharing it still chokes me up. But I just think that, people need to understand that you don't know what anyone else is going through. And, to just think before you say things.
Yeah, well, thank you, Stephanie. We're listening with open hearts to your story. And it's a very, very good reminder to all of us to really be careful about what we say, because we could really wound somebody who's very vulnerable at that time.
Yeah.
We have no idea. Yes. Carol, thank you for being patient. What was you had something you wanted to share, I think.
Right. I'm not saying don't share your feelings. I'm saying examine your motives, because some people share their feelings in order to hurt their weapons. Some people share their feelings to open doors. And if you're sharing the way you feel to start a dialogue, that's one thing. But if you're sharing your feelings just to hurt somebody, to get up, and as I say, I've faced this with some people in my family where what they were saying was not to be helpful. It was to hurt. I mean, the motive was fairly clear. Then it's not helpful. It puts hurt into the world. Also, this line about sticks and stones, that words won't hurt you, that's a lie.
Yeah,
it's a big lie. Words matter.
Not true. It's terrible disservice we do to children, teaching them that. All of my most painful experiences have to do with words that someone else has done. And sometimes the most painful experiences when someone has told me a truth in an unkind way. That's really hurts, and so I don't need somebody poking a stick in my biggest flaw. That's no fun. That's not helpful, especially if they're just trying to get my goat, which they did. Okay, let's take this a step further. Wonderful discussion so far. So let's see. We're going to actually skip to this one. So may I have a volunteer to read the first bullet, please?
Deliberation is the key to mindful speech, especially when you feel emotionally triggered. In the regular banter of a relaxed conversation, it may make sense not to be overly cautious about what you say. The interpersonal warmth and connection that comes from such banter has value in and of itself.
Okay, let me pause you there, Paul. Thank you. So what is Rabbi Jaffe saying in this first part? Do we always need to be very careful about what we say?
No.
Yeah, exactly. I find this very interesting because I find that sometimes I'm so worried about saying the wrong thing that I ended up just not saying anything. Or if I can't remember a neighbor's name, I just don't talk to them. And then I lose that whole opportunity to connect. And they don't know my name either, probably. Or if they do remember my name, they probably don't care that I forgot theirs because they forgot somebody else's name. I mean, we don't see each other and hang out very much. So that's so not being too deliberate and just speaking is important because it builds connection. Okay, thanks. Please continue.
However, the stakes are high when we feel triggered in any way. This is when we might be vulnerable to using speech to bring ourselves kavod by disparaging another, lashing out because we feel hurt, or using speech in myriad destructive ways. In such situations, we want to heed Rabbi Menachem Mendel Leffen's direction in his chapter on shtika, silence. Before you open your mouth, be silent and reflect. What benefit will my speech bring me or others?
Thank you, Paul. That saves, a 19th century version of what Linda was sharing with us earlier, thinking about, thinking before we talk. But what are some of the key things that stand out to you about this teaching? What sort of resonates? Maybe which is the hardest of these to do?
Isn't this similar to count to 10 before you speak, which I was raised with? Just count to 10, give yourself a chance to think about what you're feeling and what you're going to say.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one strategy one could use to try to take some time to let things calm down a little bit. But is it only counting to 10? What else does this add? Counting to 10 gives us the pause. What are we to do? How does it suggest we spend the time in the pause?
Just reflecting on what we're going to say, thinking about it.
Yeah.
And is it going to be helpful or is it going to be unhelpful?
Yeah, thank you. Having that time to reflect and to pause and to think about the impact of our words. What benefit will this bring to me? That's for sure a very, very important step. Yeah, Wendy.
I just have a question. What are the high stakes? What are the high stakes? I don't understand that. I mean, can anybody tell me what's that mean?
Yeah, so he's saying when we're triggered, the stakes are very high. So what does he mean by that? Joanne, are you, yeah.
Yeah, you could like ruin your relationships with people, or, if you're trying to do something in community, like just throw a wrench in the whole thing, make people defensive, and then they're not going to want to work with you. And so then you have to think about like he said, what's the benefit of what you're about to say? What good is it going to achieve? And also how you're going to say, if you feel you have to say something, to say it so it could be received maybe more easily.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. Wonderful. Nancy, I saw your hand as well.
Yeah, for me, it's a safety issue with people I know. And I've learned to be much stronger. I loved what Linda said about you need to kind of know who you are. And I'm getting stronger and stronger as the years go by to know who I could say what to. But I also, I do that pause, and I try to think like, well, this person's really important and I'm going to try to be as compassionate as I can to them. Sometimes on the other hand, I don't say anything, which may or may not help the situation, or I may have to go back another day and say, you know what, this really bothered me. Can we talk about it? I really value you and what we've created. So let's work on a solution. But it's that safety factor that sometimes really gets in the way of me. I'm not one to blurt it out unless it's somebody like my husband and I feel really mad. Even that's not okay. But, there's so much. This is such an incredible topic, I feel, because sometimes I don't say what I want to say. Sometimes I say too much and, I can be very quiet, but this is very emotionally charged for me, this topic. So thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you for sharing that, Nancy. Yeah, this is a tough one. This is like, books and books and books have been written for hundreds of years by the rabbis. Not even talking about like the psychologists or people from other religions. I mean, this is a huge, huge topic. It says in the book of Genesis that the world was created by speech. God spoke the universe into being, and we sort of create our own world with how we speak. I mean, it's just sort of it's kind of a dumb example, but it's also sort of a microcosm of this. The other day I was in a room and I was heading out and the cat was sort of standing outside of the door, meowing at me for no reason. And I'm trying to walk past him. The door's swinging closed really slowly and he's standing there and hits his tail a little bit. So he kind of lets out a yelp and runs down the stairs. And I'm like, oh my God, what are we doing there with your tail, you know, in the doorway? And it kind of reminded me when like my kids were young and they would like trip and hurt themselves or do something stupid and hurt themselves. And I would be scared and I would end up yelling at them, you know, instead of like doing something else. So that was sort of like, I was triggered. And then the cat like stayed away from me for a day because he was mad at me because I yelled at him and, you know, maybe he thought I hurt him. So that's, you know, that was a low stakes, high stakes situation. So, you know, because if I didn't yell at the cat, he probably would have been on my lap. Yes.
Okay, that explains some of it to me, but the word stakes, I think of winning and losing. So high stakes, that means you have a lot to lose.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And one of them is like what you said, Nancy, that you might like lose that friendship. You might not ever get to go back to that.
Mhm.
See, that's why I've always been really quiet. I've only talked to you guys. Greg and all of you brought it out in me. Well, I don't know if everybody else likes it, but it's true.
Oh, we love it. We're always.
I wouldn't talk at other meetings, and now I talk, but it's very, you know, it's very narrow with just you guys.
It is very scary sometimes to speak like what's on our mind. It can be really, really
I must have known that I was going to lose something.
Yeah, and I think that's what kind of makes it scary. And sometimes, you know, we get triggered because of something stupid, and it's like, all right, it's like, but sometimes it's like really something important, like something has hurt us, and it's a valid thing to be hurt about. And you know, not to say that any feelings are invalid, but it's like, but there's really something to be communicated. It could be scary because you don't know how the other person's going to react and what it's going to mean. Yeah, Carol.
I'm thinking about the high stakes. I noticed as I was growing up that my father would talk very openly to strangers. To us, he didn't speak so freely. I mean, he talked, but not very deeply to his kids until much later. But as I grew up, I noticed he spoke very easily to strangers, but not necessarily to people that he knew where there were high stakes. And I noticed I'm the same way. I'll tell my whole life story to a total stranger, a casual stranger on a bus or something. But I won't open up certain things to my friends, people I should trust. And I think that's where we're talking about high stakes. With a stranger on a bus or a train or waiting, you know, in the grocery line, there's no stakes at all. You're never going to see those people again, most likely, and you're not going to care. But if that's a friend you're trying to build trust with, or even worse, you know, a romance, right? That's even harder and more iffy. Then their stakes are extremely high.
Process question. Normally now is the time we would sort of split out into our breakout groups. And I'm thinking maybe today we won't do that because I think we're sort of on a roll here. But if people would like to kind of go out into the breakout groups, just what do people think?
That's fine.
Well, good, keeping going. I think that's what everybody means. Okay, excellent. Yeah, so all right, so now we talked about the high stakes, and now I want to go back to, let's see, where is it? Yeah, so now we're kind of talking about silence a little bit. Okay, and so what role does silence play in cultivating mindful speech? So maybe we have a volunteer to read these two bullets.
Silence is a fence for wisdom. Rabbi Akiva, the greatest sage of his generation, Pirkei Avot 3:13. All my days I grew up amidst the sages, and I never found anything as beneficial as silence. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, the scion of the leading family of his day, Pirkei Avot 1:17.
Great, so these are two very short sentences. They're both talking about silence. And in my opinion, they both have a lot to say. So what resonates with you, or what causes questions for you about this? What does it mean to be a fence for something? What does it mean that silence is a fence for wisdom? Yeah, Joanne.
I think that, and at my we've been working on Pirkei Avos for the last month or so. I think that if the other person is like, kind of a buffoon or something, or someone you don't want to get into a deep discussion with because you don't think, whatever, it's better not to say anything. And just keep to yourself what you know is,
Yeah, I put the two sentences in the chat here so people can look at them.
And
Okay.
right, the other one, I have to look at it now then because I don't remember already. Oh, right. And the thing about silence when you're among people who are much, much smarter than you. And just try to be a sponge, and I think it actually uses that word, and take in what they're saying. Or they might even disagree with each other, but at least you get an idea, that's probably beyond where you are at in relationship to them. So when you have something to learn from others.
Right. So, okay, great. So one way of learning is just being around. Yeah, I mean, he grew up like in a family where there were sages around all the time. And there is, the style of learning then, and the style of becoming a rabbi then. This was like before there, I just learned about this in rabbinical school. There were not like big academies. You would find a teacher and you go hang out with them for 10 years. And you would be their disciple. And then eventually someone would say, okay, you've learned enough. Now you can be a rabbi and go get your own students. But there's a lot of just sort of learning from being in the presence of people.
So I had a thought about the first quote, silence is a fence for wisdom. And it feels to me that the fence part is providing protection, providing a sanctuary of some sort around myself. And the silence is, for me anyway, one way of being able to introduce mindfulness into what I'm doing, introduce a certain amount of space between the monkey mind that I have that chatters all the time and the part of me that is looking to be more mindful. And so if I can enforce that silence, it does give me a chance to feel that distance and to be more aware of what it is that's happening. And that can be a path to wisdom for me anyway, at least if I know more about myself.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Paul. And one other thing I hear sort of implicit in what you're saying is if I'm taking time to be silent and quieting the monkey mind, it allows me to access the wisdom I already have. Whereas if I'm like opening my mouth, it's like, opening the gate and all the cattle run out, and who knows which horse you're going to be left with, to use a Carol analogy. You're going to get like the right horse, you're going to get the very wrong horse, so having some time to deliberate and pick which horse you're going to ride can really make a difference. Carrie, I saw your hand as well.
Things came back to me from college where when I was studying psychology, we were taught to observe. And then I was thinking of scientists who are taught to observe and not speak. You're observing animals or you're observing molecules, whatever. And there's learning there that you would not have if you were, particularly with animals, if you were talking all the time. You would miss the cues because you can't the animal can't speak to you. So it's a different kind of silence. You're being silent to observe and learn something from what you're observing. That make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. There's certain, and this was in some of the materials which I didn't share, comparing these two notes. I think you and Paul sort of gave like two sides of this, because Rabbi Akiva's is about like the wisdom you already have, and then Rabbi Gamliel's is about gaining additional wisdom, and whether you're learning that from animals or learning that from other sorts of observations. Joanna made this comment, about, being quiet around people who are smarter than us, and just having an ability to learn from them. But how do we know if someone we meet is smarter than us or not?
One way to know, I'm sorry about this, guys. One way to know is to ask questions. I'll go back off now.
Okay, so maybe to ask questions.
Yeah, ask questions.
Yeah.
I'm aware that there are different ways of being smart and wise. And I think most of my life I assumed that other people were smarter and wiser until I came upon this theory that says there are many ways, and that was helpful to me. Now I think I'm just really smart.
Well, I thank you, Linda. I love that story, because there's sort of an inherent danger in this, in the Rabbi Gamliel's, where it's like, if we take it too far, we could assume everybody's smarter, and my place is to listen from everybody. And that can be selling ourselves short sometimes.
I disagree.
What's that?
I think if you listen, you'll find out if they're smarter than you or not.
Yeah.
And if they're sages and you're a young person, you do need to listen. I'm sorry, you can ask questions and you might come up with something different than they were saying, but they're the ones with the experience. So
listening first is a good place to
vote.
start. Listening first, if it doesn't mean you need to listen continuously. Carol, and then Nancy, and then.
As a corollary to that, I think everybody learns from everybody, which means we even can learn from fools. There's an old saying, if you can't be a good example, serve as a dire warning. So, and so I think everybody can learn from everybody. I can't tell you how much I learned from my students, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old, 10, 12-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And how much I've learned from horses. I've talked about that before. And so I have a motto, it's you learn something new every day when you pay attention. So part of that silence is paying attention. And I've learned a lot about silence over the pandemic and how valuable it is and how much excess noise we have in our lives that, maybe we can't even get rid of. It's not just noise in our mind, although that's really important. It's also the noise, just the noise around us. The TV's always going, the phone's always ringing, whatever it is. So, we have to shut that stuff down sometimes.
And don't get me started on leaf blowers.
Oh, don't get me started on leaf blowers. One of the things I hate the most in the world.
Thank you, Carol.
That's
Nancy.
my pet peeve too, leaf blowers.
Mm-hmm. And Nancy, and then
thinking.
Frank.
Oh, I hope I can remember what I was going to say, because it's so deep, for me, that I used to question myself so much, and I used to be, and I still can be, intimidated by some people. It took me years. I've been married 38 years, and I'm still intimidated by my husband at times. He is one of those factually incredibly smart people, but he has a tendency to put you down. I don't think he even knows what he's doing. But anyhow, part of the thing is to feel intimidated by somebody, okay, which I allowed myself to do. And I didn't trust myself and I wasn't confident enough. And when I started to speak out in different groups, in different situations, and I shared certain things, I would have such positive response by people. You know, like, oh my gosh, Nancy, this is what we've been thinking. And oh my gosh, what you said was so eloquent. And I'm like, what? You know, and that kind of created more of a confidence really in me, but I still have to navigate and feel comfortable with the situation and the people. But I think over time that has really helped me.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you so much. That's listen with an open heart. And then Frank, you will get the last word, I believe.
This is maybe tangential, but maybe not. Recently, I don't know, maybe last year or so, what's the word? I was told that when I'm with somebody younger, I should let them speak more. And I thought about it, and I thought there was a lot of wisdom in that, actually. And so it's a little different. And I've kind of sized people up, and if I see that they're younger, I kind of try to pontificate a little bit less.
Well, that's just it, because that is sort of the danger of being the older person, or the, God, I remember when I had my first girlfriend in high school. I can't tell you how many of my parents' friends all laughed and said, oh, puppy love. And, and yeah, we went out for, some year or something and we broke up and that was that. But that was like so lame to say that, it's like, it's just not, it's like, I wanted to tell you about my new girlfriend and you're just like flushing it down the toilet, it's like, and I really, really try with like my kids when they're dating and when they're doing something, or as someone who has experience, you're 5 steps ahead of that other person and you could talk for ages, but it's not necessarily serving them. And I think that's sort of in the spirit, and you are potentially losing an opportunity to gain their wisdom, because we've all seen that student who really was smarter than the teacher, or who really did think of it as something new and different. And if we're busy pontificating, we're not going to learn that. So, okay, let's look at our practices for the coming week. So Stephanie, part of Musar is we try to kind of take what we learn and sort of take one small action that's a little bit different. And so one thing we do is we create a mantra, which we look at, and I'm going to copy these into the chat. So the idea is, this is from Proverbs, life and death are in the power of the tongue. And it's a bit dramatic, but I think it's also very powerful, because we've talked about, hurt feelings and feelings that stay, hurt feelings that stay with us for years and years and years. And we also kind of at the beginning kind of uplifted each other a little bit. And by just acknowledging and encouraging other people and celebrating their successes, we're enriching their lives. So there's a tremendous, I think the charge and energy people felt to really around this issue because of this, because their speech is so powerful. So the practice then is to pick a time of day, maybe 20 minutes, and really focus your attention on how you're speaking. Choose to remain silent or try to find something positive to say about a person. To practice Lashon Tov, which is good speech. And maybe like a meal or a meeting might be an opportunity to try this practice. Any questions about that? Anyone up for kind of giving this a try in the coming 2 weeks? All right, good. Well, I will, it will not be a test, but I will probably, in our opening sharing, I will ask to see if anyone had any interesting experiences. And sometimes they're positive and sometimes they're not. They're all opportunities for learning. Okay, so let us close as we begin with a short meditation. So please, once again, close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. Let's just sit in silence. Allow our brain just to calm and settle. See what may emerge. If you've had a meditation practice in the past that you haven't done lately, maybe this would be a good week to just try a 5-minute sit or a 2-minute sit. Or 1 minute breathing deeply in your car with the radio off. Just to allow some silence into your life. What wisdom might you uncover if you close that gate and create that fence of silence for just a few minutes every day? Now tilt your head back and smile. Let's take a moment of gratitude for these people who share their souls and hearts with today. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found this helpful and productive. Big heart, great. Linda, Carrie, haven't seen you in a little while. So nice. And Frank, not too often. We can give you guys a little heart too for coming back. So thank you. It's great to see you. There we go. Good heart, Linda. All right, there we go. We got the heart brigades going. All right, let's all give her a little best effort at heart as we say goodbye for the week.
Those make a very good heart. There we go.
All right, I will see you. Have a wonderful 2 weeks, and I'll see
You too.
Too, Greg. Thank you. This was great.
Thank you.
This was a good one.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. Have a good week, everyone.
Yeah.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat
Bye.
shalom.
Shalom.